Hi guys, it's Joey, and this is going to be my experiencing Gifu rune for this week. And I will be calling it Gifu because that is the modern version of the Nordic way of saying it. As far as I can tell, Gibo is from the Germanic, so admittedly I am not having a Nordic interpretation of the rune, but seeing as my sister's Nordic and we discuss these things between us, it's just easier for me to stick with that. So let's discuss Gifu. I connected to the energy quite quickly, and it definitely had at least two sides to this rune. I am always highly suspicious when there's a rune and people are like, there's no negative. And I don't believe that anything exists without a negative. I think there has to be balance. There has to be a lesson for each. There has to be light and dark. So I'm going to start reading from my rune journal. Most of it, there might be odd bits and pieces I'll leave out, but we'll see. I did make a few notes that I think are worth reading for the overall tone of the message this week. So, gifts will be offered from the gods, and also warns of the responsibility of accepting such gifts. Nothing ever comes from nothing. The onus of the recipient is to use the gift properly. Symbolism of a kiss, and I thought that the ritual mystical partnership was an interesting imagery that from earlier in the week. There was something musical about the drawing that I drew in my other video, and I also noted that my name, my full name, means gift of God, God is gracious, and Gifu is about gifts from the gods. I'd also noted that ash, which is associated with the rune, was tied up in the horse totem, which I did at the end of last week. I also noted that on my drawing of Gifu, there was a grail on the picture, and many Arthurian legend are tied up with Celtic belief with a Christian twist. There was confetti on my picture, which was a pagan rite of wishing a couple a fruitful union, and believing that the seeds of fertility thrown as confetti originally would be transferred onto whomever they fell, and rice has the same imagery across cultures. So that was just a few notes I made right at the outset, and they turned out to be pretty tied in. It was all quite forward flowing with this rune. So day one I wrote this. This may well be Macha's influence this week. Ash is associated with Gifu, and I just completed the horse totem set linked to Ash and Macha. And I put a note here to look up Dagda, as he is the father, male counterpart to Macha, where she is the mother figure, he is the father figure. Macha. Mother, fertility, marriages, sensuality, sexuality, confetti. Alright, so obviously the marriages, fertility, confetti, love, bells, water, cups, kiss aspect of Gifu would tie up with her realms of influence. She married a mortal man, and the consequences when he disrespected her gift, all men of Ulster suffered labour pains in mythos. She also popped up recently in my fox picture, etc. So that mythos about she married a mortal man, marriage being the ritual union, and then he betrayed her in that she told him not to tell anyone, and made her run a race against a horse when she was heavily pregnant, and all the men of Ulster suffered labour pains. In that mythos, it's well worth a read. It's a very, very interesting myth. Elm, which is also associated with Gifu, is underworld and death connected with Arthurian legend, which links into the chalice on my picture. In the earliest stories, Arthur was felled or killed by a spear of elmwood. Is the connection here from Bave to Macha, or possibly the connection of Macha to the underworld, because they all interlink with each other? As well as connecting sovereignty to Macha, Arthur being a king, legend steeped in Celtic lore, and one of the functions of Morrigan as a goddess in Celtic belief was her right to replace a weak king with a strong one, so the land might flourish, because the Celts believed that sovereignty was tied into the land, that the land had a spirit, and it was connected implicitly to their sovereign. So if the sovereign did poorly, the bounty or gifts of the earth would also be poor. And then I had this thought later on: choice is a gift. Free will, decisions, the hopeful leap. Nothing is free. Gratitude is an eternal language spanning through time and space. We can't ever truly know where we're going, but we can say thank you for the journey, and we can dance in the rain. That was just, it came to me very clearly. I shared that on Facebook, so we'll share it here. I'd had a very weird nervous energy ever since Gifu came into being. I don't know if it's my own psychology with gifts. I have a lot of problems in my history all tied into the notion of gifts. Every gift is loaded in my childhood. There was always problems with gift giving. There was nothing for free, quite literally. There was always something awful would come of gift giving, and it's a sad, sad truth tied into my childhood, and I felt very nervousy. The next day, I think, or is it the same day? Harvested the letha flowers. I also found feathers, clover flowers and white rose petals as I went wildcrafting. I found the perfect jar for the totem, for the turtle, and crafted a herbal blend. Later this week I will attempt the cat totem. That later on that day, the swap I'd taken in part, I haven't taken in part in many swaps, and I probably won't take part in many because I just don't have the funds, but I agreed to take part in a swap, and that was announced later that day. And then this is an amethyst I can't account for, and trust me when I say I know all my amethysts. Found an amethyst tumblestone in front of my altar that I don't recognise. Gift from spirit ? I don't know where it came from, and I recognise all my crystals. I don't have that many amethysts that I'm going to forget one, because I'm obsessive. Like you can see all the amethyst on this picture. Because amethyst is, by the way, is a gift, as far as I'm concerned, from the goddess to me, because it is my spirit crystal which I connect to the divine through. There's been a lot of conversation about spirit crystals this week. People have been asking about it, helping people find their spirit crystal, things like that, and that completely reminds me that I need to do my other shout out video. Anyway, that's what happens when your brain runs away from you all week. So yes, I can't account for that. Later... Oh, right, okay. So that was the end of day 1. Day 1, an amethyst turns up. Right, okay. Day 2, more turtle totem work, starting in part to feel guilty about charging for my goods, but I cannot afford to give things away as much as I would like to. This, of course, is the other side of gift giving, the fact that you cannot keep giving until you have nothing left to give, otherwise you would cripple yourself. More wild crafting, maple leaves, oak bark, feathers, eggshells around the crow trees, and I made a powder for the crone. Later that day, a Dagda and Morrigan story caught my eye, and after sunset even more Dagda information came forth. Coincidentally, let's just... it's not coincidence. After meditating, it just... I turned my iPad on and there it was, sort of thing. Dagda is the Celtic god of the earth, good king or king of Danann. He is the possessor of a vast cauldron from Murias, and from it no company ever went unthankful. He gifted everybody in his company with something from it. Gift, 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 gift. He was also in possession of a club or staff, depending on the mythos, that could give or take life. He was the lord of knowledge and fire, a sorcerer, ruler over life and death, god of the earth's fertility, as well as being a near superhero warrior. The Dagda could change the seasons and control the earth's abundance, which we've already tied into Gifu's gift-giving energies. Gifts of earth, gift of the harvest, gifts of fruits of the earth, feathers, herbs, wild crafting. There's been a lot of wild crafting this week. Originally, the supreme ruler of the... let's see if I can even say this right. Tuatha De Danann as All-Father, he ruled the world. After the Malaysians defeated the Tuatha De Danann, the old gods went underground, and the Dagda divided up the lands and gave fairy mounds to the Tuatha De Danann, mated with the Morrigan on New Year's Day, Samhain. Kidoki. So I didn't actually record anything on the third day, so I've had odd days this week where I've just totally needed some time off. It's been almost overwhelming, and I'll discuss that later. Nothing really to note of record yesterday. I did make a video about Goodhood in the abstract, and my friend from real life gave me a fitness plan as a free gift for health, and she's a real life friend. She has nothing to do with YouTube. She had bought the course and she could share it, so she did, and I've started on a new health regime because of it. Yada yada yada. YouTube is another gift, freedom of choice and speech to explore one's ideas and document my experiences. Still have the anxious energy, need to meditate further. Connection with Mercha and Dagda is harder for me, no surprise, given my poor relationship with my own mother and father. So this is, I think, part of the problem I had this week. I've definitely connected to my hair, and I have had visualizations of my hair. I've had Dagda's influence all over the place, but he hasn't shown up in a visualization. It's just been subtle influences and subtle stories, and from here on in the connections go crazy. But I do have a real problem with mother-father relationships for obvious reasons. I've had a really, really appalling childhood. Both parents were not good people, and ergo, even in my divine relationships, it's a problem. Perhaps explaining the nervous energy, because it's sort of confronting that as a thing. Okay, so yesterday Brandon, hey Brandon, shared a picture with me of a fox eating bread. Last week I saw a crow with bread. My fox picture from last week had a macha connection, as well as brown bave. The making of bread for a witch should be a magic process associated with fertility and prosperity, abundance and gifts. It can also be used to harm if utilised in negative magic, literally force-feeding another a false gift. Under the guise of a gift, you poisoning their insides. That can be very potent in message, especially when people apparently come to be your friend and actually end up poisoning you. There's also another side with bread. For me personally, it's one of my weight gain trigger foods that I have trouble resisting. There is nothing more hellish and torturing for me than the smell of freshly baked bread. Furthermore, my body has grown fairly intolerant to it. I've had the onset of quite serious IBS, which is triggered by bread. And we thought I might be gluten intolerant, and the doctor said no, it's IBS triggered. Bread. Bread is tied up in Celtic lore with Beltane. Eat a bannock on Beltane morning. Crops and animals will be fertile. Bread is also used for protection from fey magic, which will become interesting in a minute. Also tied up with Samhain festival in Celtic lore. Barn Back, traditional Halloween fair in Ireland, is a fruit bread, and it's very similar to something that I think Christians do at Christmas, which is, I don't know if the two are interrelated, like one has come from the other or not, but there's a piece of rag, a coin and a ring in the bread. Whomever receives the rag will have a doubtful financial future that year. Coin is a prosperous year and ring is romance in the year ahead. It is interesting to note that both references of bread here are linked to abundance, such as gifts received in the coming months, as well as being the two festivals which could easily be viewed as the coming of the mother goddess Mecha, Beltane, the sexual copulation of god and goddess, often viewed as birth into womanhood. Obviously there is an unfortunate side with that, but for healthy relationships where she becomes pregnant and then becomes a mother, at least in godhood anyway. And the end of her sovereignty, Samhain, when the crone takes over. Undoubtedly, bread is also a universal symbol across cultures, religions, and regions alike. Tied in with themes of rich versus poor, popular in religious stories, folklore, legend, historical documentation, accurate and fabricated. For example, Marie Antoinette's "Let them eat cake" in response to her people being without bread is considered to be an urban myth. So obviously, bread being tied in with rich versus poor, those who have financial abundance, who have the gifts of wealth, versus the poor who do not, and so on and so forth. You could probably write a dissertation about bread, and we're not going to. Feel hungry enough as it is. I also found foxglove flowers on the ground yesterday, a day after talking about them online, which is far too coincidental, all tied up with the Fae again. Now this could be a Beltane-Letha connection to Mecha, both her festivals in large part, as well as being Fae energy festivals. However, the courts of Avalon and Morgan Le Fay are considered C, spelled S-I-D-H-E, or royal courts of the Fae realm. The Tuatha De Danann retired to Fae Mounds, led by Dagna after their defeat of the Milesians. And then I did some research. In Ireland, when at the onset of Christianity, Morrigan would not have made an ideal saint, given her female strength, warrior, and disobedient, maybe, nature. Therefore, she was transformed into a fairy, making her a sexual, dangerous deviant, as well as making her power over death and prophecy a little bit circumspect. According to folklore, the Morrigan led her Fae court across the land each year on the night of Samhain, honouring the goddess's union with Dagda. And this is... okay, I don't think we need that bit. I wrote that bit down for for Desert Siren. La, 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 la. A lot of the tales around Fae associated with the Morrigan, such as those with the Morgan, which are a bit like mermaids, were the church warning against passion and desire. Another Fae associated with her is the Banshee, which actually originally means Fae woman, and of course later becomes known as a frightening creature that screams death, and is connected with a washer for and bathe. This is something I always find interesting. As Morgan Le Fay, the goddess's right within the realm of sovereignty to bestow rulership of kings, fertility and land, was twisted by making her into one of the Fae. What was once, this is a direct quote from Stephanie Woodfield, what was once sacred to the goddess becomes a menacing aspect of her personality. She retains her power, but its significance, its sacredness, is lost. So, as a goddess, as we mentioned earlier, it was the Morrigan's right within Celtic law to replace a weakened king with a new, stronger king in their warrior hierarchy, weakness not being a good thing for a leader of, well, it's not ever a good thing, but still. And it was her sacred duty, her sacred right as a goddess to do this. And when she becomes twisted into Morgan Le Fay, or has a guise as Morgan Le Fay, and her position is twisted, that makes it something that's more about Morgan Le Fay's selfish desires rather than her goddess right. And in one Arthurian legend, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, she sends the Green Knight to test the courage of Arthur's men. The Green Knight calls her a goddess, making her divine nature obvious. And quick note, all the Arthurian stuff from my picture earlier. The connection of Morgan Le Fay to the Morrigan can be viewed as any and all of the aspects Maiden Mother Crone, but the most common themes here are sexuality and sovereignty. Both are undoubtedly Macha's realms of influence, and the Fey connection of Morgana, as well as the foxgloves, fox as well, fox back to last week, and then as well as having Fey associations, it's also got witchy associations, tie in with Dagda as well. I was thinking of the small nature of gifts I've received and had this message come through clear as day. Do not disregard small gifts. It might just be they have the potential to be life-changing. The health and exercise plan I received as a free gift certainly has the potential to completely change my physiology. So before we move on from that to the flip side of what came through this week, and we shall talk about that at length. Now, some people have misinterpreted what I said because I shared that quote. And the idea is that from small things, huge life-changing events can come. And it's very obvious in the imagery of from acorns. From tiny acorns grow mighty oaks is a famous saying. And from very small gifts can come life-changing things. If you think about it, wedding rings or engagement rings are tiny little things, and they can change your whole life, and babies aren't that big and they change your whole life, and all the rest of it. So all of that was tied up with sovereignty. The sovereignty will play a part in the next bit of Macha's lesson as well. Sovereignty is the gift of leadership bestowed on a lucky individual, and comes with a great burden of responsibility. It's a gift of power, but you must be responsible for those in your care, which is going to tie in a minute. Sensuality and sexuality is all tied up with Macha and gifts of freedom of being able to choose our partners and such like. The things in the picture, by the way, the cat, this is the cat herbal blend and the cat oil, both of which are quite sensual and have tied into Macha's energies of the gift, giving, of sensuality, of freedom, of being a woman. So I mentioned our responsibilities, and I think the second half of the week was tempered by some unfortunate news stories and stories that people told me and things that came to my attention, and it was all very tied up with young people and children and parents behaving in such a way that was disrespectful to their children, and it was all very disturbing, actually. We're supposed to be there to protect and the children and not expose them to pain, ridicule. That we are there to protect them, we are not there to benefit from them. It's just, there were some really horrible stories this week, and then there's some flip side of like youngsters who obviously haven't had a very, I don't know, haven't had the proper bringing up or something, because then they turn around and are aggressive towards adults. So there was a lot of that in the latter half of this week, and it was most disturbing. Like, it was basically what happens when people twist the gifts they've been given to use them for their own advantage, and it was really disturbing. So this came through. This is Macha in her most... She was not ferocious, she was just very, very strong when this came through. No child of Morrigan asks for pity. Blade over shield, shield over arm, arm over heart. That's my phrase, my saying. We stand. We do not flout weakness or the weakness of others, and expect praise for our flouting of their weaknesses. More on the above theme the next day. We do not shirk the responsibilities given to us by our goddess, in my case Morrigan. We protect those who need our protection, and remember, it is our duty. We do not draw attention to the weaknesses of others. We do not ask for recognition of our task. We do not make excuses. There is no pity for us. We are doing our duty. We do it with honour. This is a message through Macha and Dagda with regards to them being parent figures as well as sovereigns. It is the flip side of the gift rune. Gift giving in many cultures, especially with regards to sovereigns, is a matter of duty and respect and honouring of them. We do not rub our gifts in other people's faces for whatever reason. We do not go looking for gifts. Oh, okay. We do not go looking for gifts. Like try and get things off people for praise, for recognition. We fulfill our duty, and that is the... Oh, we do not go looking for praise or for recognition that we fulfilled our duty. That is to dishonour the gift and the responsibility. Yeah. So the flip side of the rune being responsibility and honouring our responsibilities and honouring our duties. We are often given things which we may consider to be gifts, but it is our responsibility to look after them, to protect them, particularly in the case of children. And before I hear any cries of "you do not have any children," I brought up my sisters, and I can tell you right now that for someone who was 2 years older than her middle sister and 3 years older than her baby sister, and had not the clout of a mother figure but had to do pretty much everything for them, is a fucking hellish experience. And I would never ever share any of the stuff that happened with them, because I would be dishonouring them. And they are... my middle sister I still have a relationship with, and she is a gift to me. She is my sister, she's my friend, and I love her very dearly. And I could never have shirked the responsibility of looking after her growing up, and I didn't. But I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, pity me for this. I mean, pity is a reaction of some people, but it's not something I'm looking for. I am very proud of how me and my sister survived. I have a ferocious pride of that, and I don't think I need to explain that anymore, because I don't feel the need to dishonour them by going into it. It was my duty. I did it. We fought. We survived. That's mine. So, I think I've covered every aspect of Gifu that's been going on this week. I'm having to do it today, which is Thursday, which is a day earlier at least than I would normally do it, because I'm going to visit gnomes, relatives, on Saturday. So we're going to be away, which also means that my drawing will be a day late, but I'll get it done. I'll try and get it done on Sunday, depending on how tired I am, if not Monday, but it will definitely happen. It will definitely happen. We'll get that sorted out. I do enjoy doing the drawings, and it's my way of connecting with the runes. It helps me get into the flow of the energies and the messages, and this week I immediately knew it would be Macha, and I thought maybe Dagda, and like I've said, he has come up in like the mythos, he's come up through the connections, he's come up through the Fae connections, through the fairy mounds, he's come up in sort of Celtic lore, to do with all these things. I'm just looking through the sexuality, sensuality, god, goddess, male, female, king, queen balance. So other than wildcrafting and my amethyst, I haven't technically had any physical gifts. I mean, I think everything my wildcrafting has been beautiful, and I couldn't believe the amethyst. It freaked me out a little bit. I've never had something appear in my room a little bit odd. I was like, I did check if someone had put it there, by the way, and nope. So I don't know where that's come from. So very interesting with the Fae connections this week. It's not something I've delved into in any great detail, but apparently it's been flowing through the energies in one way or another. So I think we've covered everything we need to with Gifu. It's been a very weird week. Highs and lows, and nervous energies, and then this really weird sort of kick at the end of the week. I wonder if we're getting a more serious rune next week because of this, and it's just very, very tied up with duty and people misusing their gifts and being like, I mean, I guess it ties into the idea that people are like, look at me, I'm good at something, look at me, I do this, look at me, and or like abusing their gifts full on, like people that were using their kids to fight and stuff. It's just ugh. I don't agree with it one iota. I'm fiercely proud of my sisters and fiercely protective of my sisters, and I would never share anything about them without their consent, and I'm fiercely proud of that relationship. So it baffles me that people can use their kids in any other way, or even their family in any other way, but then I have first-hand experience of people who do not take a proper approach to their family, inverted commas, units, so it happens. So I think that's going to be it for Gifu. I hope you enjoyed this video. It felt a little bit more abstract this week, but it definitely had a very interesting duality of message. Many blessings.